Hi, I'm Paul Thorpe, and today I want to show how to replace a set of patio doors, wood doors, that have been broken into with a new set of doors with a multi-point lock, which is a lot more secure. Kicked it in and blew out this whole part of the door, and the bolt just snapped. And on the fixed door, you can see that's the strike plate that the bolt it broke past it, and it didn't take much to get through this. Now this patio door is in the backyard, it's off the street, so this is the kind of place where a thief will try to break in really quickly, and they can just kick right at that height, and he's got one bolt holding the door shut. But I'm going to put in a multi-point lock on the new door, and this is a great lock because it locks at different points. It'll be installed in the door, and it'll shoot a bolt up to the top and shoot a bolt down into the threshold, and also have a bolt going like the deadbolt into the fixed door. So you have 3 points of security. It's virtually impossible to kick that in because of all those attachments. So now I'm in my shop and I want to machine for my multi-point track before I send the door to the painters. And this track goes the entire length of the door, and I have to route a groove for it. So I'm going to be using my jig that'll center a groove right on that door. And then for the cassette, I'm going to use my lock mortiser, which is just basically a router set on a couple of rails. And then these tracks are adjustable for the length, but they're not adjustable on the bottom. So I'm going to lay out from the bottom. And then when I get to the top, this top leg piece, I'll just trim that to the exact length of the door. It cuts a groove that's centered in the middle of a 1 3/4 inch door, so it works for any kind of mortise you want to make centered in a door, and then you can just change the size of your router bit to change the width of the mortise, but it's pretty versatile jig. So here I've got my jig set on the edge of my door, and I'm going to do a 2-step route. So the first route is a 5/8 wide mortise that's just about 3/32 for the top plate, and then and I can do that with my setup. I have a 1/2 inch bit in a 5/8 collar here, and then I have a second mortise, and that'll be a 1/2 inch wide mortise that's about 7/16 deep. And I'm just going to use the same setup in the router, but just switch to a 3/8 bit. And I've got that going the whole length of the door, so that looks good there. So now I've put a 3/8 bit into the router, and that'll just shrink my mortise down 1/8 of an inch. So now I'm looking at my 2-step mortise here, and we can see that I'm going to test the fit, and I can see that I'm looking good here. Now when I do this this multi-point lock, it has this bolt that throws on the bottom like that. And that's when you turn the handle, it'll throw a bolt. And I want that bolt to capture into the strike plate good and deep. So I want to hold this, because I know my door is about 5/8 above the threshold. So I want to hold the bottom of the track below the bottom of the door about 5/16. And then when that bolt shoots, it'll be really good and deep into that plate. That's what I want. And then I'm not worried about the track sitting below the door, because I also have my door shoe that's going to go there, and that's actually about 1/2 of an inch. So if my track's hanging down 5/16, it's still going to be above the bottom of the shoe, basically. It's not going to look really conspicuous, so that's good. And you can't trim the length of this track. The track on the top piece you can trim to cut the final length, but this bottom piece of track is fixed at 36 inches to the knob height. So I have to actually start here and choose where I locate that, and that'll tell me where I'm laying my knob. Okay, so this is my lock mortiser. It's for making long, deep pocket mortises for cassettes like this. And right now I've got the regular 1-inch bit for doing like a big Baldwin cassette mortise, but I want to be skinnier and do a 5/8 cutter on that, which is the smallest cutter I can put on this machine. And if you remember that our track is 5/8 wide, so that's as wide as I can go, and that'll be the width of that cassette, and that'll just carve that mortise out. So don't need to go too tight. My depth stop here is set for about 3 1/4. So I want this cassette's about 3 1/16, so I want to go a little past that. So I'm going to go 3 1/4 deep, and then it'll cut the length of that mortise. I'll show you that on the door. I've got a couple marks on the door. The first one is where the top of the clamp's going to be, and I'll cut that mortise, then I'll just move it down and cut the remainder of the mortise out. And then I'm just looking at my line here, and this clamp will just center the cutter right in the middle of the door. So now I can see what a nice mortise my lock mortiser made here, and I'm just going to drop my cassette in there, and that looks good. I'm going to center it on the knob. So right now I'm going to lay out my crossbores I've got for my knob and my deadbolt. This is my knob right here. So that's about a 9/16 crossbore, and I'm this Multipoint's 2 3/8 back set. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And I've got my crossbores that are lining up with my knob. And now I'm going to attach the other top pieces. So what I want to do is just put one screw in the bottom track so it'll stay in place. And be gentle here, don't ram these in. Just kind of set them flush and tight, but don't over tighten them. And then I just kind of switch to hand tools, and I take out this little machine screw they give you, and that is going to hold the top track in. So these two pieces are just going to mate up right there by the latch, and then this little tongue here, and the screw is going to hold them together. I'm just going to have to finesse them into that connection there, so there it's sitting flush. And that locks the bottom two pieces in there. And now I'm going to figure out my top piece. And I just kind of lay in there and I measure, and I see that I'm about 15/16. I've got my mark at 15/16. I'm just going to cut that. Now you want to make sure that your tail is fully extended when you make that cut. So I'm pulling that tight all the way down there, and then I'm going to make the cut. And you see the bolts out here. If you were to not have that extended, and if you were to make the cut there, then you'd be pulling that tail, would be traveling down too far. So we connect these two. This serrated tongue just drops into that serrated groove there, and that's how they stay together. Now this tongue is operating that bolt on the bottom, so you want to make sure you're fully pulled up, and that retracts that bolt. And then you want to make sure you're retracted there, so you want to retract there, and then you put them together. And you just kind of have to feel, well, that was pretty good there, but sometimes you have to work that little connection with the serrations. So now that's tight there, we're looking good there, even a fuzz low, which is what I wanted. And then when that bolt gets thrown down, it'll throw this bolt up. And my doors have been painted, got them back from the shop, painting shop, and now I'm going to put my hardware back in and do my final installation. So now I've got to put my flush bolts in. This is the last thing to cut in, and these have the round tops, so I need my round top jig. And since I'm already painted, I'm just going to tape the jig on so I don't have to put a hole in the side of it. So now I got my flush bolt on. So I'm ready to put my trim in, my trim plates, my handles, and also my deadbolt is going to go in there too. And I kind of do everything sort of gently at first, and then I'll get it lined up in place just perfectly, and then tighten the screws up at the end. And then I'm going to take my knob, and we have two two spindles here. And they've got this little kind of groove down the middle, and that it goes toward the latch, and that's where the set screw is going to poke into that groove basically, and that holds it in place. Set that in there and that'll help kind of line the trim plate up. Now I want to put my deadbolt in. There's a thread there in the middle, and that's going to take this long screw which goes in through the edge of the track, and that'll hold that deadbolt in place. So again, it's good to have this a little bit loose so you can make sure you can slide that in there like that. Okay, hi guy. Now I've got my doors in and they're hanging where I want them to hang, so I need to find my strike plate location. So I'm just kind of overlaying it on the track like that, and I can sort of see where the top and bottom is and just transfer that over to the astragal. And here I've laid out my location, and I'll just use my jig here, and again I'm just going to tape it on because I'm pre-finished on the astragal here. Okay, my doors are finished. We're all done. They look really great. And then we have our multi-point lock. So we fix the fixed door with 2 bolts on the top and the bottom, and then shut our active door, and that throws the bolt on the top and the bottom. And then I lock the deadbolt. And now I'm locked at 3 points: the top, the deadbolt, and the bottom. So if somebody wants to try and kick this in, they won't be able to just get through 1 point. They got to get through 3 points, and it'll be almost impossible for them to get past this door now. Okay, well, that's it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I had a fun time, and I'll see you next time.